So now we're going to look at the refinery process. We have all this crude oil that we have extracted from the earth, and we need to get it into forms that we can use in your car, for example. So this is one of the towers that you might see at the refinery. So here are a bunch of the refinery towers. We're just taking a look at one of those. These towers are called fractionation towers. So this is a fractionation tower. And if you think of a fraction is a part of the whole. And what's happening is we're bringing in this crude oil and we're going to separate it into its parts. So again, we've gone through this transport process with the pipeline or the ship or the trains. And refineries are going to be located usually in near ports. That's where a lot of the ships will be coming in. And we don't want to spend a lot of time transporting all this crude oil long distances. And so a lot of your refineries are found at ports where ships can come in. So we're going to be pumping in our crude oil into this fractionation tower. So if you can write in crude oil. And this crude oil is not refined, it's a mixture. And the crude oil is coming in the liquid form. So I'm just going to put a little italicized L right there. So it's liquid crude oil that's being pumped into this fractionation tower. The fractionation tower is pretty hot. So what they do to this liquid is they heat it up. So we heat to about 500 degrees Celsius, approximately. So in comes the liquid crude oil, and it hits this heat, and it begins to expand, and it becomes a gas. So this crude oil then becomes crude oil vapors. So now we're in the gaseous form of the crude oil. And as these vapors go up the fractionation tower, they're getting further and further away from the heat source down below here. So what's going to happen to the temperature? As you get further and further away from the heat source, it's going to drop. So higher in the fractionation tower is a cooler temperature. And what's going to happen is the gases are going to cool, and then they're going to condense. And they're going to condense into a liquid. Let's say this is going to be about 400 degrees Celsius. So what's happening is it's still very, very hot, but we're going to be taking out the first liquid that's going to come out at this hotter temperature. Now, for example, let's say that you have rubbing alcohol and water. Rubbing alcohol has a condensation point of about 80 degrees Celsius. Water has a condensation point of about 100 degrees Celsius. It's also the same as the boiling point. So it's very, very hot. So imagine you have rubbing alcohol and water coming in. They turn into gaseous vapors, and it's above 100 degrees Celsius. Let's say it's 150 or even 200 degrees Celsius. It's too hot for both of them to condense, and so they're both going to rise as gases. Then it's going to cool to 100 degrees Celsius. What's going to happen is you're going to get your water coming out first, and then as you continue to get further away from your heat source, it's going to go down to 80 degrees Celsius, and then what's going to happen here is your rubbing alcohol will condense up here, and then you'll get your rubbing alcohol at this level. So what's happening is you're extracting out what can condense at 400 degrees Celsius. And what happens is the other vapors continue on their way. So the vapors continue to go up, but then we've extracted this one liquid at 400 degrees Celsius, And what we're getting out of here is engine oil. Now, this is not the fuel that powers your car. This is the engine oil that lubricates the cylinders and the pistons. Whenever you get an oil change, this is the engine oil that you put into your car. Okay, so it's very, very thick. It's very, very, very gooey. So then the vapors continue to rise. We've taken out all of our engine oil. And what's going to happen is, again, these vapors are going to get further and further away from our heat source. So the same thing's going to happen. They're going to cool and condense. And it's going to form a liquid in this chamber. So these vapors continue until it gets far enough away. And this is going to be approximately about 300 degrees Celsius. So at 300 degrees Celsius, we pull out another product. At 400, we pulled out engine oil. At 300, we pull out diesel fuel. The other products, it's still too hot for them to condense. They're going to continue to rise as vapors until, once again, we get far away from the heat source. Some of those gases are going to cool and condense into a liquid. This is going to be about 200 degrees Celsius. And at 200 degrees Celsius, we have another product, and this is kerosene. Kerosene is the fuel for your camping lanterns. So we have one more major product. We haven't even gotten to gasoline yet. We've got our engine oil. We have our diesel, which is used in many vehicles. We have kerosene for lanterns. What happens is the remaining vapors are going to continue to rise because it's still too hot for them to condense. But as they get farther and farther away from the heat source, these are going to cool and condense. So we get our last liquid out, and that's at about 100 degrees Celsius. And this is when we get our octane. Octane is our gasoline. This is what goes into your gas tank. So again, in your fractionation tower, we're pumping in all the crude oil. It's heated, very, very hot. Everything becomes a vapor. And then one by one by one by one, we begin to cool our vapors. And the one with the highest condensation point will cool first. And as you go higher and higher and higher, it gets cooler and cooler and cooler. And we get all of these different parts coming out. So after that, the octane, that then gets further purified because there may be some impurities. That goes to a different fractionation tower. The kerosene goes to a different fractionation tower. The diesel and the engine oil, they all go to different fractionation towers to try to purify those substances even further. So all of these things right here that we're getting, all these guys, the engine oil, the diesel, the kerosene, the octane, these are the parts that we get. Here's our whole. So this is the mixture. This is the whole that we start with, and we end up with these parts. These parts are called the fractions. That's why it's called a fractionation tower. We're taking the whole crude oil and we're breaking it up into its parts and purifying it and refining it. So to summarize, to transform our crude oil into gasoline, we're going to be heating our mixture. So this is taking the mixture. And then when you heat it, that crude oil becomes a gas. And then it cools as it rises through the fractionation tower. And then it's going to then condense at various temperatures. And at each temperature, we're going to be getting a different product. These are going to be your refined products. That's why it's called a refinery, because we're refining the crude oil into these parts and fractions into these pure substances.